My name is Julia, a person known for her 99% seriousness. Yet here I am, standing outside my home, accompanied only by a solitary suitcase, hastily packed with my bare essentials. Clutched tightly in my hand are two ominous envelopes. It was on the cusp of early summer, the most enchanting season of the year, when I found myself abruptly ousted from my in-laws' residence. There was no forewarning, no hint of the impending storm. Enticed by the delightful aroma drifting from the kitchen, I completed my usual morning routine and descended the stairs, eager for breakfast. The tantalizing scent promised a feast, typical of my housemate's culinary prowess. Today, it seemed, breakfast was served American style. Brimming with anticipation, I pushed open the living room door, only to be greeted not by a sumptuous meal, but by an unexpected confrontation. "Julia, you deceived us," my mother-in-law's accusing voice pierced the air as tears welled in her eyes. Her words, laden with betrayal, echoed incoherently, accusing me of treachery and shattered trust. After delivering her accusations, my mother-in-law departed, leaving behind a lingering glare heavy with resentment. Meanwhile, my father-in-law remained, his gaze burning with simmering fury. "What's going on?" It was all I could muster, my confusion mounting. I couldn't fathom why my in-laws were suddenly treating me with such hostility. Just yesterday, we were on amicable terms, much like with my own parents. As I grappled with their inexplicable behavior, my husband Ryan, who had been silently consuming his breakfast, caught my eye. Last night, he began, explaining that he had opted to spend the night at our other residence near his workplace, leading me to believe he wouldn't be present this morning. Had he returned home late last night? Desperate for clarity, I rushed to Ryan, seeking his assistance. "What's wrong with Mom and Dad?" My words caught in my throat just as I was about to utter, "They're behaving." But my attention shifted abruptly to Ryan, whose demeanor had taken a chilling turn. His gaze pierced through me, laden with accusation and contempt, a far cry from the warmth and kindness I was accustomed to. "Ryan, how could you?" The words spilled from his lips, dripping with venom. Gone was the gentle melody of his usual speech, replaced by a harshness I had never encountered before. This was the same Ryan who would surprise me with my favorite flowers whenever his work kept us apart. "I'm sorry. I truly wish we could still travel together," he continued, his words a stark departure from the sentiments he had expressed just a week prior. With a gesture to the secretary, who stood nearby, he signaled for action. "Take care of it," he instructed, the command delivered with an air of finality. "You've finally done it, Julia, haven't you?" His accusation hung heavy in the air, stabbing at my core. "Married me for the money, didn't you?" "What? You've taken my mother's money," I protested, disbelief lacing my words. "Wait, that's not true." The accusation hung heavy in the air, the enormity of the alleged sum sinking in. "And now you're trying to justify it." My father-in-law's voice was laced with scorn. "What? What on earth are you talking about, Dad? I swear, I didn't touch a penny of her money. Get out of this house." "Dad, what's happening?" I pleaded desperately for clarity, but received only a curt denial in response. It seemed I was being accused of embezzling a significant amount from my mother-in-law, a notion utterly unfounded in reality. I begged for understanding, for someone to believe me, but my pleas fell on deaf ears. A chill ran down my spine as the secretary reappeared, clutching a suitcase likely containing my belongings. "Please, Ryan, listen to me," I implored, but he shook his head with a disappointed expression, as though delivering lines in a tragic play. He was convinced of my guilt. "These are the divorce papers," he stated matter-of-factly, thrusting them towards me. "Once you've signed them, send them back to me." "What? Why?" I exclaimed, my voice trembling with disbelief. "I can't live with someone solely interested in a family inheritance. It's the family's decision." Ryan's words cut through the air like icicles, sending shivers down my spine. "Now, leave. It's not fair. I haven't done anything," I protested vehemently, but my pleas fell on deaf ears. Ryan's demeanor remained stoic as he commanded his secretary, "Ensure she never returns to this property." "What? What's happening?" "Stop." I struggled against the secretary's firm grip as he forcibly escorted me out, my suitcase in tow. Tears streamed down my face, mingling with the tumult of emotions swirling within me. Coming from humble beginnings, I knew the allure of wealth, but I was never one to resort to deceit. The grandeur of the mansion felt like a cruel contrast as I was unceremoniously ejected onto the street, barely half an hour after waking. Was this a nightmare? My mind raced, struggling to comprehend the surreal turn of events. Amidst the chaos, the imposing door slammed shut mercilessly. Just before it sealed me off completely, the secretary thrust another envelope into my hand, a final act of cruelty. "This is also from Mr. Ryan. Please take it," the secretary's voice broke through the tense silence. With a finality that matched the closing of the door, the lock clicked shut, sealing my fate. With trembling hands, I peered into the envelope, my heart sinking as I beheld its contents. A severance payment of $10,000. I had married Ryan 3 years prior, finding employment as an advisory accountant at the company where my father-in-law held the reins as CEO. Despite just passing my CPA exam, I was relegated to a subordinate role, more of an assistant to my colleagues out of pity. Then, one fateful day, everything changed. The pieces of the puzzle began to align in a way that didn't make sense. Something was amiss. Driven by a desire to prove myself as a competent CPA, I had delved into a task assigned to a colleague, only to uncover a web of deceit. My colleague had been manipulating the books, siphoning off hundreds of thousands of dollars. In that moment, a mixture of exhilaration and dread coursed through me. Yet I knew I couldn't turn a blind eye to such wrongdoing. Summoning my courage, I made the difficult decision to report the fraud to my father-in-law, the CEO. As someone deeply committed to honesty and integrity, turning a blind eye was never an option for me. Though the thought of reporting the fraud to the IRS crossed my mind, I hesitated. After all, such a drastic action would strip my colleague of their CPA status, a consequence I found difficult to reconcile with, especially after my own hard-won journey to becoming a CPA. My father-in-law, a shrewd businessman who had amassed a considerable fortune in a single generation, had been unwittingly targeted. "Thank you, Julia. We're indebted to you. Without your intervention, who knows how long they would have continued siphoning off funds," my father-in-law expressed his gratitude, his wife echoing his sentiments. I found myself celebrated as a hero, as if I had single-handedly saved the day. "Julia, if you're not involved with anyone at the moment, would you consider marrying our son?" The proposition caught me off guard, and I couldn't help but wonder if such flattery was commonplace among the wealthy. Though I laughed it off at the time, little did I know that my father-in-law's suggestion held genuine weight. Before I knew it, I found myself being introduced to their son, a man who praised me for safeguarding the family's assets. Bathed in their praise, I couldn't help but feel a sense of validation. After years of being criticized for my seriousness, it seemed that living authentically and earnestly had finally paid off. And in that moment, I couldn't help but feel a profound sense of happiness. As a trainee CPA, I had never imagined ascending to the role of official advisory accountant, let alone being appointed as personal secretary to Ryan, the CEO's son. Ryan embodied the archetype of privilege, perpetually optimistic with a laissez-faire attitude that initially grated on my meticulous nature. Yet, amidst his dependency on me, I discovered a sense of fulfillment in aiding him. "Ryan, you really need to leave for the business meeting soon," I reminded him, checking my watch. "I'll manage just fine. You should get going." "Are you sure you won't stress out the driver this time?" he teased, flashing a charming smile. "I've got everything under control," I assured him, ushering him towards the door. Perhaps he appreciated my attention to detail more than I had realized. Our relationship evolved from professional to romantic, much to the delight of my father-in-law, who had harbored hopes of our union. The wedding was met with resounding approval, and for 3 years, the dynamics between Ryan, myself, and my in-laws remained largely unchanged. The most significant shift came with my father-in-law's decision to pass the company's reins to Ryan. As preparations for his ascent to the boardroom accelerated, my mother-in-law and I found ourselves immersed in a whirlwind of meetings and social engagements. Tonight was meant to be no exception, with a business partner's anniversary party on the agenda. Instead, I found myself alone in a sterile hotel room, a stark departure from the anticipated festivities. In the heat of anger and frustration, the thought of retreating to my parents' home briefly crossed my mind. But the notion didn't sit right with me. If Ryan wanted a divorce, so be it. But as someone who prides herself on honesty and sincerity, leaving under a cloud of suspicion was unthinkable. Seated on the bed, I revisited the contents of the envelope, divorce papers, and a severance payment. Despite the wave of emotions threatening to overwhelm me, I fought to maintain composure. I needed clarity. With a steadying breath, I closed my eyes and reaffirmed to myself, I haven't taken a penny of my mother-in-law's money. That's a fact. If not me, then who? The rush of excitement and fear surged once more. Gathering the bundle of $10,000, I resolved to make good use of it. After a quick touch-up of my makeup, I made my way to the private detective's office. A week later, my phone rang. We have the results of the investigation. I arrived at the office greeted by a stack of papers on the reception table. The report, thicker than anticipated, sent a shiver down my spine as I flipped through its contents, my hands trembling with anticipation. What? Ha! Each revelation in the report left me reeling, my head spinning as I absorbed the shocking truth. Exiting the building, I was greeted by an unpleasantly brisk breeze, a stark contrast to the turmoil swirling within me. Collapsing beneath the shade of a nearby street tree, I grappled with the weight of the newfound knowledge. Passers-by cast curious glances my way, oblivious to the internal battle raging within me. With resolve coursing through my veins, I made my way to my in-laws' home, determined to confront them. Why was she allowed inside? My father-in-law demanded, his voice laced with disdain as he berated the maid. Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward, presenting the signed divorce papers. I've brought these, I stated firmly. You instructed me to mail them. If you seek a divorce, I won't stand in your way. But I refuse to be labeled a thief, I continued, my voice unwavering. Snatching the papers from my grasp, my father-in-law turned to leave. But I refused to let him go without a final declaration. I demand an apology from all of you, I asserted, my words echoing through the room. If you're unwilling to acknowledge your wrongdoing, I'm prepared to pursue this matter in court. As the prospect of legal action loomed, my father-in-law halted in his tracks. I was pleased when you accepted me, despite my humble background. I held genuine affection for you and your mother-in-law, he confessed, his voice tinged with remorse. Summoning my courage, I drew in a deep breath, my fists clenched at my sides. Then, with a measured exhale, I spoke. I'm telling you, I'm innocent. Do you understand? Let me be clear. I didn't do anything, I reiterated, striving to maintain composure. What? What do you mean? I didn't. My mother-in-law's voice, seemingly emerging from the shadows, pierced the tense atmosphere with confusion etched across her features. I mean exactly what I said, I affirmed, extracting the investigation report from my bag and passing it to her. Please take a look. What? What's this? What's going on? Their eyes widened as they devoured the contents of the report, their expressions teetering on the brink of disbelief. The person responsible for stealing my mother-in-law's money, it was Ryan, I revealed, the weight of the truth heavy in my words. Before our marriage, Ryan had developed a reckless habit of overspending. He used to justify it by saying, "We have enough family wealth to live extravagantly for a lifetime." He indulged in frequent trips abroad, particularly enjoying gambling, often wagering hundreds of thousands of dollars at a time. Even his own parents had grown increasingly concerned, implementing measures to curb his access to their funds. They admonished Ryan, urging him to earn his own income. However, old habits die hard, and Ryan, consumed by his penchant for extravagance, sought out alternative means to sustain his lifestyle. That's when he concocted the embezzlement scheme that I ultimately uncovered. Ryan had manipulated my former colleague, who served as my father-in-law's accounting consultant, into falsifying the books. Mistakenly attributing the embezzlement solely to my former colleague, I reported it to my father-in-law without probing deeper, never uncovering the true mastermind. In reality, all the embezzled funds were lining Ryan's pockets. When the truth about my former colleague's embezzlement came to light, Ryan and his parents expressed gratitude towards me, but beneath their facade of appreciation, I sensed a simmering resentment. Was there a romantic involvement between the accountant and Ryan? It seems more like an affair, doesn't it? After all, she was married at the time, someone speculated. Nevertheless, Ryan professed his love for her, convincing her to embezzle funds for their future together. Another voice chimed in. As a consequence of her actions, my former colleague was terminated from her position and faced divorce from her husband, who had reached his breaking point. Despite obediently complying with Ryan's selfish request to keep his involvement under wraps, he ultimately wedded me. His persuasion tactic was clear: distract his parents by marrying a financially prudent partner like myself, thereby easing their suspicions and enabling him to continue his scheming. And indeed, his plan unfolded seamlessly. With my reputation for uncovering discrepancies, my in-laws relaxed their vigilance regarding Ryan's extravagant spending simply because I was his wife. "Mother-in-law, why did you believe I stole your money?" I questioned, my voice tinged with disbelief. "Ryan told me he entrusted you with my card, Julia," she confessed, avoiding my gaze. I felt a pang of betrayal as her words sank in. "Ryan, he's been taking his responsibilities seriously lately, and I thought there might be occasions where it wouldn't be convenient to pay in cash, so I allowed him to carry my credit card. But then he said, I mustn't use it recklessly, so I'll have Julia manage it. And so, Her voice trailed off, her expression clouded with regret. "So, because of that, I was accused of theft," I interjected bitterly. Just to clarify, Ryan never mentioned any of this to me. Caught off guard by the realization of her son's deception, my mother-in-law's features fell slack with disbelief. "By the way, mother-in-law, have you read about what your stolen money was used for?" I pressed, seeking to redirect the conversation. I don't understand anything anymore," she admitted, her voice laden with confusion and distress. My mother-in-law's voice trembled, barely audible over the weight of her emotions as tears welled up in her eyes. I returned the report to them, bracing myself for their reaction. "The purchase of a condominium," my mother-in-law murmured, her voice laden with disbelief. "Let me see that," my father-in-law interjected, his brows furrowed in confusion. "But Ryan already has another house near his office. Why would he buy a condo for the senior accountant?" It's becoming clear now. Ryan has been entangled with her all along. Lately, he's been spending an unusual amount of time at the other house, likely staying with her. Ryan has always been with that woman. He loved her more than he ever loved me, Julia, my mother-in-law confessed, her words heavy with heartbreak. I remained composed, devoid of emotion, having already processed the nauseating contents of the report countless times before this moment. It appears Ryan has been indulging in quite the affair with the senior accountant. They even frequent underground casinos, I added matter-of-factly. "Underground casinos? Please take a look at the last page," my mother-in-law urged, a glimmer of hope flickering in her eyes. My father-in-law frantically flipped through the pages of the report, his brows furrowed in concern. "What's this staggering amount?" he exclaimed, his voice tinged with disbelief. "He's deeply involved with the underground casino. It seems he'll be grappling with debt for the foreseeable future," I explained solemnly. "Underground casino." My father-in-law's voice trailed off as he sank to the floor, overcome with shock. "Just to be certain, none of our other cards have been compromised, correct?" I inquired, prompting my father-in-law into action. "Ha!" His eyes widened in realization as he rushed to the nearest telephone, panic evident in his movements. "Stop everything. Cancel that card immediately." His urgent command reverberated throughout the house. Later, I received a formal apology from my in-laws. They expressed regret for concealing their son's extravagant spending and his affair. While I appreciated their honesty, I couldn't help but feel a pang of disappointment. Their apology seemed incomplete without addressing the hurt they caused me. Nevertheless, I handed them the completed divorce papers. With a small nod, I began to gather my belongings, ready to leave. But as they pleaded for me to stay, their sudden change in demeanor caught me off guard. Just a week ago, they had treated me like a criminal. "I'm sorry, but isn't it a bit late for that?" I interrupted, my voice tinged with frustration. "I loved you both and considered you family, but you disregarded my feelings and opinions. Do you have any idea how hurtful that was for me?" Despite my efforts to remain composed, a solitary tear betrayed my emotions, quickly followed by a cascade of tears streaming down my cheeks. "Julia." The divorce papers lay before us, a stark reminder of the irreparable rift between us. "This divorce is what your son desires. Shouldn't we respect his wishes?" It was evident that he had moved on with someone else. After composing myself and injecting a final touch of sarcasm, an abrupt alarm pierced the silence, jolting us all. Startled by the sudden noise, I furrowed my brow in confusion, only to have my father-in-law grasp my wrist urgently. "Hey, what's going on? What are you doing?" I questioned, taken aback by his sudden urgency. "You should come too, honey," he insisted, leading me outside to the garden. There, the gate that had shut me out just a week ago stood before us, and we heard a voice from the other side. "Hey, the gate won't open. Is anyone home?" Ryan's frustrated voice echoed through the gate, followed by the sound of him banging on it vigorously. What's happening? My car won't start either. This is ridiculous. Ryan's frustration was palpable as the annoying alarm persisted, refusing to cease its blaring. Listen closely, Ryan, my father-in-law began, his tone firm and unwavering. Huh? Dad, can you hear me? My key isn't working. Can you unlock it from your side? Ryan's voice crackled through the intercom, tinged with confusion. I told you to listen, Ryan, my father-in-law's voice boomed over the intercom. What? What's going on? Ryan's tone faltered, sensing the shift in his father's demeanor. You have no right to open this gate, my father-in-law declared firmly. What? Why would you say that? Ryan's voice rose in disbelief. Isn't it obvious? I didn't think you could be so oblivious. We're aware of everything, all of it, my father-in-law continued, his voice unwavering. Is Mom there too? Ryan's voice trembled with uncertainty. Ryan, Julia meant the world to us, but you're a different story. We want nothing to do with you ever again, my father-in-law declared resolutely. What? What's happening? Mom, are you there? Please say something, Ryan pleaded desperately. We know that you framed Julia. We know about the embezzlement. We know about your affair and your debts. We know everything, my father-in-law stated, his voice filled with conviction. Wait a minute, where did you get such absurd ideas? Stop spreading lies. Ryan's voice cracked with indignation. Ryan's frantic protests continued, but to no avail. Anxiety gnawed at me as I wondered if his parents would be swayed by his words and doubt me once again. However, my fears were unfounded. I trust Julia. So do I, Dad, his mother interjected firmly. Mom, Ryan's voice wavered, betraying his disbelief. We sincerely apologize. Julia, would you please consider taking my position? His father implored. What? Hey, is Julia there too? Ryan's voice erupted in anger, reverberating through the air. He seemed to be causing quite a commotion. However, his resistance was short-lived as security personnel arrived to calm him down. In the end, I agreed to my father-in-law's proposal, but with one condition: I will always be honest. Can you trust me unconditionally? They both nodded solemnly. A year later. Do you really think I'm cut out for this executive role? I hesitated, lingering in front of the executive office door. My father-in-law gave me a reassuring pat on the shoulder. Despite my divorce from Ryan, I still addressed the CEO as Dad, as we had mutually agreed upon. Julia, what our company truly needs is someone with your integrity and sincerity. It's a perfect fit for you, don't you think? He offered, his smile warm and encouraging. However, I couldn't resist a slightly mischievous question. Do you ever regret letting Ryan go? He should be the one stepping into this role, shouldn't he? Since the incident, my in-laws had distanced themselves from Ryan. Initially, he would often come pleading for financial assistance, but once he realized they wouldn't comply, he stopped. The son who had vanished under the weight of enormous debt. I wondered if he was still with that senior. Ryan let out a small, lonely sigh, but Ryan isn't the one meant for this position. The responsibility was too much for him. We're the ones to blame for indulging him too much, my father-in-law admitted. Dad, I murmured sympathetically. Hey, don't look so disheartened. Stand tall and proud, he encouraged. Yes, I replied with newfound determination, reaching for the handle of the executive office door. As it swung open effortlessly, I stepped inside, ready to embrace my new role. Is the funeral finished? Hurry home now. Today is Eliza's birthday party, so get ready, my dear daughter. Shelley, who was only 5 years old, has passed away. This is what my mother-in-law, Lori, told me on the day we said our final goodbyes to Shelley. Lori didn't go to her own granddaughter's funeral. Instead, she asked him to come back for her sister-in-law Eliza's birthday celebration. I was puzzled and upset by her request. My sadness turned into anger, and I decided to make a phone call. To someone. My name is Rel, and I'm a 33-year-old homemaker. I have a 5-year-old daughter, my husband Milo, who is 2 years older than me, and I met through a mutual friend. We got married 6 years ago, and soon after, we were blessed with our daughter Shelley. She's only 5 years old now, at her most adorable age. It's heartbreaking that her fate was so harsh. 2 years ago, Shelley started to become weak. When she was 3, she began to have fevers and chills frequently. Her neck also started swelling. We thought it might be mumps, so we took her to the hospital. There, the doctor said, "You need to get tests done at a bigger hospital right away." That's what the doctor told me. After lots of tests at the big hospital and waiting nervously, the doctors finally told us what was wrong. Shelley had malignant lymphoma, a type of cancer kids can get. When I heard this, it felt like my world went dark. I begged the doctor, "This has to be a mistake, right? Please tell me it's not true." Even though the doctor and nurses were there, I couldn't help but cry. Shelley needed to be hospitalized right away, so we rushed home to gather things we needed, but I couldn't stop crying. My husband, Milo, was also crying, but he tried to be strong for us. "We have to be brave. Shelley will get better," he said firmly, trying to encourage me. The doctors explained the illness and the treatments Shelley would need, and I had to sign papers giving permission for things like blood transfusions and surgery. The treatments were tough. Shelley had to get medicine through an IV, have blood taken, get blood transfusions, and have chemotherapy. I quit my part-time job so I could be with Shelley at the hospital all the time. Sometimes Milo would take time off work to come and see us, and he'd tell me, "You need to take a break sometimes, Michelle, or you'll get sick too." When Milo was visiting, I'd take care of things at home or try to get some rest to keep my strength up. In the first few days at the hospital, Shelley cried a lot, but as she got used to being there, she cried less and less. The nurses would compliment her, saying things like, "Shelley was so brave today. She didn't cry at all when she got her shot." Even though Shelley's hair fell out and she felt weak because of the medicine she had to take, she never complained. She always had a smile on her face. One day when Milo and I went to visit her, Shelley showed us a drawing she did of us in her notebook. "Mom, look," she said proudly. "Shelley, it's really good," I told her, feeling proud too. Shelley was always chatty, even when she was lying in her hospital bed. Her talking made us feel stronger. When her white blood cell count was low, she had to stay in a special clean room. But after about a month, when her blood count got better, she was allowed to come home for a little while. "Mom, I want to go to preschool," she said excitedly. So we took her back to school for the first time in a long time. Seeing Shelley playing happily with her friends made us so happy. When we got home, my mom came to visit. "Shelley, you're doing so well," she said, holding Shelley close. Seeing Shelley being so lively and playful in my mom's arms made it hard to believe she was sick. "Mom, it smells like home," Shelley said as she sniffed the towels and blankets that had been drying at home for a few days. She seemed full of energy. But then she suddenly said, "Mom, my head hurts." She looked a bit lost and complained. "Let me check. Oh, you have a little fever. Stay here. I'll make you some soup." I tucked Shelley into bed and quickly finished up my chores, then started making soup. Just as I was about to start cooking, the doorbell rang. When I looked at the monitor, I saw Lori. I immediately wished I hadn't answered the door. "Lori, what brings you here?" I wanted to ask, "Do you need a reason to visit your son's house?" But I stayed quiet. Normally, I'd be happy to welcome a kind mother-in-law, but Lori, Milo's mom, was the last person I wanted to see. If I asked her, she'd probably say her hobby is harassing her daughter-in-law, I thought to myself. Since Milo and I got married, Lori had been constantly giving me a hard time, making fun of me for not having a higher education, or for being tall instead of cute. It was like she had a knack for saying hurtful things. When Milo's dad was alive, he would sometimes step in and tell her off, which made things a little easier to handle. But after he passed away from an illness during our second year of marriage, Lori's behavior got even worse. With no one to keep her in check, she'd do things like not ordering my favorite food or turning off the hot water while I was in the shower. Just little, mean things like that. Milo has an older sister, Eliza, who's a successful career woman. Her husband, my brother-in-law, is a prosecutor, and Lori is really proud of Eliza. She's always comparing me to Eliza and making snide comments. Eliza has a son named Jace, who's in second grade. When we visited for Christmas, it was obvious how differently Lori treated Jace compared to Shelley. Even though Shelley is her granddaughter, it seems like Lori doesn't find her adorable because she doesn't like me, her daughter-in-law. While I was busy making soup, Lori came barging in from next door. "Ah, Shelley has a fever," I thought. "If you don't have any business here, just leave." But then she said, "Such a weak child. I wonder where she gets it from. Certainly not our side of the family. Your dad had cancer, didn't he?" Yes, Lori, I've told you many times, this illness isn't passed down through families. Yes, my dad died from cancer when I was in high school. But malignant lymphoma isn't usually inherited, except in some cases related to certain viruses. How many times do I have to explain this? Is she forgetting things? In the end, Lori just took a quick look at Shelley, said something mean, and left. I wonder if she has dementia. In the end, I glanced at Shelley's face, made a few sarcastic remarks, and left. I wondered what her purpose was. Was she just bored? Shelley spent about a year going back and forth between staying in the hospital and coming home for a few days as her blood count got better. After about a year and a half in the hospital, she finished her treatment and we were finally able to bring her home. She was able to go back to preschool, and we even took a family trip to the aquarium. She was full of energy and seemed so lively. I never doubted that Shelley would get better. But a year after she left the hospital, when she turned 5, my worst fears came true. Her illness came back. The painful treatment started again. She had injections in her spine, radiation therapy, she got pneumonia, and had high fevers. I did everything I could to help her. I massaged her swollen face and legs, and I even had a bone marrow transplant for her, hoping it would make her better. But unfortunately, it didn't work, and her condition got worse. Then the doctor told us the harsh truth. There's nothing more we can do. It meant that more treatment would only make Shelley suffer more. The doctor said she didn't have much time left, so we decided to bring Shelley home and make the most of the time we had left together. We did everything Shelley wanted to do. She even got to join in on the activities at preschool and play with her friends. Her smile brought joy to everyone around her. Mom visited a lot. I promised myself that I wouldn't cry in front of Shelley, but sometimes I couldn't help it, and tears would fall. Mom, what's wrong? Do you have a headache? Even though she was in pain, Shelley was still so caring, always worrying about me. I prayed so hard for our happy moments to never end, for a miracle to save Shelley, but my prayers went unanswered. Even though she looked healthy, her blood test results kept getting worse. Her condition was getting worse too, and eventually she couldn't even walk. But we were certain that she would make it to her 6th birthday. However, things took a turn for the worse very quickly. Shelley started having trouble breathing. You should be prepared, the doctor told us. I had promised myself I wouldn't cry, but I couldn't hold it back. In a daze, I told Shelley, I love you, and she weakly replied, I love you too. Despite how hard it was for her to speak, she managed to say those last words. Around 4 a.m., she got really critical. The doctor tried everything to save her, but Shelley passed away. We held her in our arms like we promised, wanting her to feel loved as she went to sleep for the last time. We begged her to stay with us, but she couldn't. I didn't have time to grieve because I was immediately swept up in arranging her funeral. It felt like if I stopped moving, I would lose my mind. When we got to the funeral home, Lori said, "You're not coming to my words." I replied, "Right now, taking care of the living is more important than anything else. Eliza is coming back from overseas, and today is her birthday. We need to pick up the cake." I was feeling really confused and upset with all the things you were saying. I said, trying hard to not let my anger burst out. "At least bring a gift later. You better show up, or I won't forgive you." As if you're the one who gets to forgive, I blocked Lori's number and called someone else instead. Many people came to the funeral, including doctors from the hospital, friends from preschool, and my own friends. Everyone was crying for Shelley, which was really touching. We put her favorite sunflowers in her coffin, and her friends put letters inside too. Milo did a good job representing our grieving family. After a while, Milo and I went to his parents' house. "Milo, Rel, please help," Lori begged as we walked in. We ignored her and went to the living room. Eliza's family and some relatives were there, and they all seemed angry at Lori. Eliza was the first to talk to us. "I'm really sorry, Rel. We didn't know today was Shell's funeral." After I hung up on Lori, I called my sister-in-law, Eliza. Despite Lori often comparing us, Eliza and I had a close bond, like real sisters. Since I was an only child, I cherished Eliza like family. Her son, Jace, used to play with Shelley a lot. Even when Shelley got sick, Eliza visited us often to show her support. This year, Eliza had to go abroad for work, and when she returned, it happened to be on her birthday, which overlapped with Shelley's funeral. We were busy dealing with everything and had asked Lori to inform her side of the family. But Lori, in her foolishness, told them about a birthday party for Eliza instead of Shelley's funeral. Eliza, who I had personally informed, was shocked to find out that Lori hadn't attended the funeral. When Eliza contacted me again after returning home, the funeral was already over, but they were waiting for us to return. Eliza, among others, was mourning Shelley, while everyone gave Lori cold looks. Lori said, "You can always have another child," which were the worst possible words to say. Then, with a furious look, Eliza threw the cake prepared for her right at Lori's face. "Clean up that twisted personality of yours." She dragged Lori to the shower room and drenched her in her clothes completely. When asked why Lori had called, Lori weakly replied, "Lori was nagging me to hurry back for Eliza's birthday party preparations." The relatives were shocked and disgusted. After coming out of the shower room, Lori, completely soaked, was looked down upon by everyone. "No, but it's Eliza's birthday party. She's returning after so long. Shelley was sick anyway, not expected to live long. Eliza's birthday is more important, right?" Lori's excuse was met with anger from Eliza, who furiously asked, "My birthday party? What nonsense. Calling Rel for that? If Shelley was so important, how could you not understand Milo's grief over losing her? Why didn't you attend your granddaughter Shelley's funeral?" "No, but..." Lori started, but she couldn't find an excuse and grew quieter. That's when Jace spoke up. "Grandma, you don't really love your grandchildren, do you?" To Jace's soft murmur, Lori could only respond, "That's not true." "I love you, Jace," I said. "You're healthy and Eliza's child." "What's that supposed to mean? So Shelley, my child, wasn't loved because she was ill, and your daughter-in-law's daughter." Milo, who had been holding back his anger, couldn't stay silent any longer. "No, but Shelley was Michelle's child, so I kept my distance. She was always sick and in bed. Not fun at all." "So Jace, Eliza's healthy child is loved, but my daughter Shelley is not because she was frail. You're insane for prioritizing Shell's birthday over attending her funeral. Have you lost your mind?" These words came from Lori's brother, my uncle-in-law, and his wife, my aunt-in-law. "She's always been crazy. She harassed us when we got married, even tore my daughter's dress for her piano recital," added no one at the scene stood by Lori, who had become utterly diminished. "We're leaving now, Milo Michelle. We'll talk again another time." We hugged my uncle and aunt tightly. "We're leaving too. Mom, we're done with you," said Milo firmly. "Wait, Milo, I always felt scolded by you, always praising the successful CIS. Did you ignore Shelley because of that?" "It's not like that, Milo, you know. You didn't study like Eliza, didn't listen. So you only care about those who follow your rules, right?" said Milo, looking sad, as I gave Lori something beside him. It was a drawing of Lori made by Shelley. In the picture, Lori was smiling. "Even though you didn't show much love to Shelley, she looked up to you. I resented you and never saw you smile. But maybe Shelley saw the side of you that smiled like this." Shelley was a gentle and kind child. Even when she was sick, she worried about me. Maybe she saw kindness in you through her eyes. Lori cried for the first time, holding onto the drawing tightly. But it was too late now. "We're leaving too. I won't see Mom again," said Eliza. "Please don't go," Lori pleaded. But we all left without listening. Later, my uncle-in-law's family came to see us. They said sorry for Lori's actions. After praying for Shelley and talking lightly about Lori, they left. Lori seemed sorry as she held Shelley's drawing, but what she did couldn't be fixed. As my aunt-in-law said, Lori has always been difficult. It's unlikely she'll change now. After this incident, other relatives also decided to stop talking to Lori. Despite feeling sorry for her, her strange behavior over the years made it easier for everyone to stay away. She might end up alone, regretting her actions, but that's something she'll have to live with. After Shelley's funeral, the busy days went by and all the arrangements were done. It took some time, but I finally felt the full weight of losing Shelley. I was so overwhelmed with grief that I couldn't see clearly, which worried Milo a lot. My mom had to come stay with us for a while to help out. I felt like I was losing my mind. I just wanted to be with Shelley, drowning in despair. I couldn't stop wondering if I could have saved her by taking her to the hospital sooner or paying more attention to her health. But I couldn't give up on my own life. Shelley fought so hard until the end, even when she was barely conscious. She wanted to live so badly. Eventually, I started to find some hope. I joined a support group for parents who lost children to the same illness. It helped to talk and cry with others who understood my pain. Reconnecting with Eliza and spending time with her also brought some comfort. Milo and I decided to adopt a puppy. The playful puppy brings joy to everyone it meets, wagging its tail happily. It feels like a small piece of Shelley has come back to us. Are you up in heaven drawing, chatting, and smiling? One day, I'll be with you there. We'll see each other again, so please wait for me. But if by some miracle I get to see your smile again here on Earth, that would mean everything to me. As Shelley's mom, I promise to live a life that honors her memory. I'm going to my parents' house for a month. What will you do about your chores at home if you're leaving? My son, I'm getting divorced. My mother-in-law gave me divorce papers. This works out well, she said when I left. I filed for divorce, went to my parents' house, and told my dad. After a month, my mother-in-law called me non-stop. Please, I messed up, I'm sorry, help me. My name is Emily. I'm 38 years old and I work in an office. Right now, I live with my husband, Tucker, and my mother-in-law in their house. Even though I should feel happy about being married to Tucker, I really regret it. The reason is that my mother-in-law bullies me all the time and never changes her behavior. Tucker and I met at work. Our companies were partners, so we often worked together. Over time, we became closer and started going out for meals and dates. After about a year of dating, Tucker proposed, and we decided to get married. That was 3 years ago when I was 35. At the start of our marriage, we were really happy. It was just the two of us, and I hadn't realized what my husband was really like yet. We both had good jobs and made good money. On weekends, we treated ourselves to nice trips and delicious meals at fancy restaurants. I thought we'd keep making great memories together. But things changed 2 years into our marriage. It all started when my husband's dad got sick suddenly and passed away. My mom is really sad about losing Dad, my husband said, turning to me for advice. Do you think we should move in with her? I was a bit confused. Sure, I cared about my mother-in-law, but we had only been married for 2 years. I wanted to live as a couple a bit longer, at least, but it seemed like my husband didn't want to leave his mom alone. I'm her only son, so I feel like I need to take care of her as much as I can, you know? Truth is, I hadn't been very attentive to my own dad before he passed away. Tucker, seeing my husband so sad, I felt the urge to help and support him. But I still regret the decision we made back then. If only I had realized what my husband was really like sooner, maybe things wouldn't have been so tough. Shortly after, my husband and I moved into my in-laws' house. Tucker, it's good of you to be here, my mother-in-law said. Mom, you don't have to worry anymore now that we're here, Tucker replied. Thank you, dear. I'll take care of you both from now on, she said. Of course, we appreciate it, Tucker responded. I couldn't shake the feeling that my mother-in-law's response to me was a bit distant. Feeling uneasy, I walked into the in-laws' house. After quickly putting away our things, my husband and I headed to the living room. I got some treats today since you were coming, my mother-in-law said. These are from my favorite bakery. I love the almond paste they use, my husband exclaimed happily, and I couldn't help but smile at his childlike excitement. But then my mother-in-law gave me a cold look and said, Emily, are you all right? Why do you look so lost? I brought some pastries, so let's hurry and make some coffee. I'm sorry, where are the coffee pots and things? You're so useless, aren't you? Oh, here they are. The shelf for the wife's stuff is here, she said, placing things in a messy way as she spoke. This happened because you never helped out before. Even though my mother-in-law said that, I couldn't agree. Even before, my husband and I often visited her house. But whenever I offered to help, she'd say, no need, just sit down, and wouldn't let me into the kitchen. Maybe she had strong preferences and didn't want anyone else interfering with her space, I thought later. I decided to stop offering to help altogether. Yet she would still get mad at me out of nowhere, which I thought was unfair. In response, my mother-in-law gave me a harsh look. What's with that look? Do you have a problem? She snapped. No, I didn't want to argue directly with her. Instead, I hoped my husband would step in and stop her. I glanced at him sitting at the dining table, but he seemed unconcerned, busy playing with his phone. It made me mad that he didn't care about me, his wife, being unfairly scolded. I never expected to face such unpleasantness right from the start. I started feeling anxious about living with my mother-in-law. And so, living with my mother-in-law began, and right away, problems started arising. It happened early in the morning. "Hey, Emily, why are you still sleeping?" I quickly checked the time on my phone. Well, it's only 5 in the morning, mother." "So what? You should be up making breakfast and Tucker's lunch, and don't forget you're supposed to clean the bathroom every day." My mother-in-law's words shocked me. Firstly, I didn't usually make lunch for my husband, and we often skipped breakfast because we weren't hungry. Plus, I never cleaned the bathroom before going to work because it was tiring. Sure, doing all those things required waking up early, but were they really necessary? As I hesitated, my mother-in-law got mad at me for not moving. "Why are you just standing there? Hurry up. What kind of upbringing did you have to become so useless?" she scolded. Her words angered me, so I decided to do exactly as she said. Every day, I woke up at 5 a.m. and cooked lunch and breakfast for my husband and me. It wasn't just simple meals. I made fancy dishes, and I always cleaned the bathroom thoroughly. Surprisingly, I started feeling better about cleaning the bathroom. It felt good to have a clean bathroom every day. My husband appreciated my hard work and thanked me for the meals and cleaning. But my mother-in-law didn't seem happy. She kept demanding more from me. "Today, I feel like having Japanese food." "No, wait, Italian." "Oh, but it has to be authentic. Make pizza from scratch, cook pasta, and get that red wine from the fancy shop." My mother-in-law would make these demanding requests as if it were a special occasion. And the frustrating part is that my husband always listens to her. "Make sure you do it exactly how my mom wants," he'd say, leaving everything to me. He didn't help at all. And once I took charge, he wouldn't lift a finger. Most of our precious days off were spent preparing the dinners my mother-in-law desired. On top of that, she would complain to me about various things. "You're a wife. Why are you still working? You should be at home supporting your husband. Plus, you're getting older, and the time to have children is running out. Do you realize you're almost worthless?" she'd say. Every day, my mother-in-law bombarded me with hurtful words, causing me to question her character. What kind of upbringing would produce someone like her? And my husband never stood up for me. One day, already stressed from work and dealing with my mother-in-law, my husband said something to me. "My mom says you're neglecting the housework. Is that true? You never listen to me and always act defiantly. I used to appreciate you making lunch every day, but now I hear it's all frozen food. Do you really believe what your mom says?" Of course I believe her. Why wouldn't I? Are you suggesting my mom is lying? You're acting terribly as a wife. Can't you fulfill your role properly? My husband snapped. I was furious at his words. What are you talking about? Just look for yourself. I make homemade lunches, clean, do laundry, and cook dinner every day, I protested. I'm telling you to stop lying. What mom says is true, Tucker. You're acting crazy, you mama's boy. What are you even saying? You never believe me or help me with anything. What exactly do you want me to do? You're such a nuisance, I retorted. It's just as mom says. Tucker's face turned red as he angrily responded. After that big fight, their relationship worsened. Whenever my mother-in-law harassed me, Tucker would join in and insult me too. Hey, is dinner ready? I just got home. Hurry up, my husband demanded. You're so slow and useless, my mother-in-law chimed in. Well, you're both failures, so it's no surprise, I muttered under my breath. Never mind, let's just go out to eat together, my husband suggested. That sounds good. Let's go, my mother-in-law agreed. They left me behind and went out to eat together, completely excluding me from the family. Every day, I endured insults and belittlement from both of them. Did I really need to put up with this marriage? That's when an unexpected opportunity came my way, and I thought, with this, I don't need to stay with my husband and mother-in-law anymore. Amidst all the turmoil, my husband and mother-in-law kept harassing me as usual. You're absolutely worthless as a daughter-in-law. I can't fathom how my son ended up marrying you. She scolded me while my husband chuckled along. It's time for a change, I interrupted, standing firm in front of them. I'm going back to my parents' house for a month. They both stared at me with widened eyes, a mix of surprise and anger evident on their faces. What? What about the house? What if there's a fire? My husband panicked. Yeah, you're being incredibly irresponsible. If you're leaving, then divorce my son. My mother-in-law yelled, grabbing something from a drawer. It was the divorce papers. She threw them at me. "Go ahead, sign it," she challenged. "Oh, Mom, you're prepared for this," my husband remarked, surprised. "That's right. You have no choice but to obey us. If you don't like it, then get a divorce." "This is a convenient situation," my mother-in-law asserted. "Fine, let's get divorced then," I responded firmly. They both widened their eyes in shock at my response, but I ignored their reactions and picked up the divorce papers, starting to fill them out. "I'm done with my part, so please leave quickly," I told them. My husband blinked at me in disbelief. "Was that earlier just a bluff?" "That was really lame," he muttered. But when I insisted, he probably glared at me. "Don't mess around. I'm serious. Let's get divorced," I said firmly. Tucker forcefully snatched the divorce papers from me and filled in his own section. "Is this good enough?" he asked, slamming the divorce papers on the table. "Even if you want to take it back, it's too late." "Oh well, this means it's over for you two in my heart," she laughed loudly. "I thought it's over for you guys." As soon as I left my in-laws' house, I promptly submitted the divorce papers. I returned to my parents' house and told my father about everything. He was shocked and promised to take necessary actions to address the situation. Then, 1 month later, my mother-in-law bombarded me with phone calls. Hello? You, what do you want? We're complete strangers now. Please don't say that. Tucker and I are in a difficult situation," I responded. "Oh really? That must be tough for you," she replied sarcastically. "I haven't said anything yet. I'd rather end this call. Can I hang up?" "Wait, I have a favor to ask. Can you talk to your father?" my mother-in-law pleaded. "Why should I, after everything you and Tucker put me through?" I retorted. "I'm sorry about that. I didn't realize that your father's company is an important business partner of the company Tucker works for," she explained. "Actually, my father runs his own company and it's quite successful. He used to have business dealings with Tucker's company too. We probably discussed this before we got married. But at that time, my father-in-law was still alive, and maybe my mother-in-law didn't think she needed to be involved in the conversation. As for Tucker, it's strange that he doesn't remember. But maybe he forgot while siding with my mother-in-law and criticizing me. When my father decided to end the business dealings, Tucker's company offered to continue the contract by letting go of Tucker instead. So Tucker lost his job. And it turns out that Tucker had suggested remodeling our family home when we were planning to live together, and he took out a loan for it. Now that he's unemployed, it's almost impossible to manage loan payments while trying to make a living. Until now, we've been able to manage because I've been contributing my fair share of living expenses as a company employee. But now that I'm divorced, Tucker and my mother-in-law must be in a tough situation. Why did you feel the need to show off by remodeling the house, Tucker? You're so proud, just like your mother. Please help me, my mother-in-law pleaded. I apologize for my mistakes, she continued weakly, lacking the strength to respond to my provocation. I'm sorry, but I can't forgive you for what you've done. If you're expecting me to help you, it's pointless. Instead, focus on finding a job, even if it's temporary. As for me, this conversation is a waste of time, so I'm ending it now. After ending the call and blocking their numbers, I heard that my ex-husband and mother-in-law couldn't keep up with the mortgage payments, so they had to sell the house. It wasn't even that old, and my mother-in-law could have lived there during her retirement. It's a shame they wasted money and let it go. Currently, they're living in an apartment on an island somewhere. My ex-husband works part-time while they rely on my mother-in-law's pension to get by. Meanwhile, I was getting ready to move overseas. Instead of renting a new place, I decided to stay with my parents until I leave. I'll cherish the time with them until then. I'm excited and hopeful about life and work in the new country. Despite the difficulties with my ex-husband and mother-in-law, I'm optimistic about the future. I wonder why they treated me so poorly, but I'm glad to have cut ties with them. Maybe I'll find a wonderful partner overseas and have an international marriage. I genuinely wish them happiness in their future. Thanks for following my story, and if you enjoyed it, please subscribe to the channel. I look forward to sharing more with you in the future. It's like a dream come true. We got a huge $300 million inheritance in our very own company. When the workers saw my sister-in-law, Mary, celebrating our dad's inheritance, they started whispering to each other. They were super happy, and Mary proudly said, Shay, keep it down. This is the moment when my husband gets to take over the company and get $3 million. After hearing that, one of the workers burst out laughing. My older brother, sitting next to his confused wife, was reading a will from the lawyer. His face went pale as he read it. "Look at this," my brother said, showing her the will. She screamed. "I'm Lucy, 29 years old, and I work for my dad's business. When he was young, my dad had the smart idea to start a business from scratch. Over time, it grew into a decent-sized company with lots of workers. But right after starting the business, he got into debt. Even as a little kid, I could see how tough it was for my dad. Even when the company got bigger, I still wanted to help my mom with her clerical work in the office. My parents told me I could go to college and choose any career I wanted, but I really wanted to work for my dad's company. That's all I could think about when I finished high school. When I joined my dad's company, Bob, who had been working there for a long time, was the first person to teach me about business. He didn't treat me differently just because I was the boss's daughter. Thanks to Bob, I got to learn a lot about how the company works. My brother Tom, who's only 2 years older than me, went to college to learn about management. He was always proud to tell people that our dad ran a business and that he would take over one day. Tom's friends would ask him, "What are your plans after college, Tom? Are you going to find a job?" Tom would say, "I don't need to find a job because I'll be working for my dad's company. I'll become the president eventually, so I'm taking my time to learn about management until then." "Wow, you're going to be the next president. That sounds like a really stable future. I'm kinda jealous," one of Tom's friends said. "Tom, you have a younger sister too, right? Won't there be a competition over who gets to take over the company?" Another friend asked. "Yeah, I have a younger sister, but she's just finished high school and she's pretty down to earth," Tom replied. "You always say that, but I've heard she's actually doing some important work behind the scenes at the company. If I become president, I'll make sure to keep her on board as long as she listens to me," Tom assured. My brother was spending a lot of money and having fun, pretending it was all part of learning to be a business manager. He knew that if he acted well, he'd have lots of friends around him, and being the next president of the company made him popular with women who wanted to date him. He ended up marrying Mary, who was very flashy and attractive. They had a fancy wedding, went on a luxurious honeymoon overseas, built a big mansion, and started their life together. He said he did all this to look good as the future president of the company. Mary seemed happy with Tom. He listened to her and let her enjoy all the fancy things in life. "I doubt she'd want a life like mine, where I work with my mom behind the scenes in my dad's company," I told someone. "Lucy, you don't seem like the CEO's daughter. You don't act like you're the president's daughter," she said. Mary would often laugh at me when we saw each other at family events. "I prefer a simpler life," I said. She looked at me like she felt sorry for me. "I pity you for being the president's daughter but not knowing how to spend money. You still live with your parents and have plenty of money, so you don't need to work hard. And with your title, shouldn't men be drawn to you?" My brother chimed in, "Yeah, she's right. Lucy's always been so humble. People wouldn't even guess her dad's the president. She treats everyone like equals. It's surprising. I still have a lot to learn in my job. Many of my colleagues are better than me, so I can't act like I'm the boss," I argued. But my brother looked shocked. "That's why you're not useful. A boss needs to stand out so they're respected by their team. Let others handle the simple tasks. It seems like only Dad and I are the bosses around here. You shouldn't belittle your team, no matter how powerful you are." Before I could reply, my brother interrupted me, looking annoyed. "A woman who's too logical isn't attractive to men." Then Mary joined in. "If you keep talking like that, you'll never find a husband. You should try to be more appealing, don't you think, Tom?" "Yeah, well, when I become president, I might just fire a humble employee like you," Tom said. After that, my brother and Mary said their piece and left quickly. My mom, who had stayed quiet during all of this, comforted me after they left. She said, "You're doing great work for the company, which really helps me and your dad. Don't let what Tom says bother you." My dad nodded, looking serious. They had already told my brother to his face that they didn't like his ideas. But after that, my brother and Mary got upset and didn't come to our house for over a month. I remembered how gloomy it was during that time, so I told my parents, "Tom and Mary can say whatever they want." After that, Tom and Mary kept living their lives however they wanted, going to fancy restaurants and luxury resorts. It was all to make it seem like Tom would be the president of my dad's company one day. My dad was working really hard to grow his business, but one night at home, he started complaining of chest pain. "Dad, are you okay? Just try to stay calm." "I'll call for an ambulance," I said. "Lucy, grab this." As we waited for the ambulance, my dad motioned to a drawer and told me he had a letter for me. I hurriedly grabbed the letter from the drawer. "I want you to read this if anything happens to me. Everything else is up to the lawyers," he said breathlessly before losing consciousness before the ambulance arrived. Despite being rushed to the emergency room, he died without regaining consciousness. My brother and Mary were away on a trip when my father passed away, so they couldn't be there for him. They returned from their trip 2 days later. At the end of my father's funeral, Tom said, "We're just glad we arrived on time. I never imagined my father would pass away while we were on vacation." I was shocked. My brother and Mary showed up at the funeral without any worries, not acknowledging that my mother and I had been left to handle everything. I talked to my brother about it in private, so the other employees wouldn't hear. "Couldn't you have come back home sooner?" I asked my brother in private. "What?" "I couldn't. Our return flight was already booked," my brother replied without offering an apology, then turned to address the employees. "Thank you all for your support. From now on, I'll be stepping into my father's shoes with dignity," he said. Mary glanced around at the employees, who had gone silent at my brother's words, and praised him, saying, "That's exactly what Tom would do." "Everyone's impressed, right? It's only natural, considering my husband's dignity." With pride, my brother said to me, "Lucy, isn't the ceremony about to begin? Please lead the way." I was annoyed by my brother's tardiness and his arrogance, but I led him and the employees to the meal ceremony table. My brother continued to act arrogantly as we ate. "Lucy, isn't the quality of this food questionable? It might lower our father's reputation as president," he remarked. "Mom and I already discussed it and agreed on the menu. Plus, I don't need you telling me what to do. This is why people don't understand what it means to be president," I snapped back. He not only bossed me around but also gave orders to the other employees serving the guests. "You're useless," he declared. I hurried to intervene when I heard my brother ordering Bob, a longtime employee, around. "Tom, that's not right. Don't talk down to Bob or any of our employees. They deserve respect. Why should I act humble in front of someone who's just an employee? They should show me more respect as the president," he argued. Mary joined in, backing him up. "That's correct. Lucy, stop disrespecting Tom, the president of the company. If you keep disobeying him, he can fire you. He's in charge," she warned. Just as my brother and his wife were getting worked up, a man showed up. "Sorry to interrupt. Your father asked me to handle his inheritance," he revealed. He was the lawyer my father had hired while he was still alive. Then it hit me. My father had mentioned before he passed away that he had already hired a lawyer. It seemed he had been preparing for his death and had spoken with a lawyer a few years back. My brother and Mary's faces lit up when the lawyer mentioned inheritance. They eagerly welcomed him into their room. Tom said, "Thank you for coming. Let's get this done as soon as possible." But as he spoke with the lawyer, Tom started to cry. Wasn't my father's inheritance supposed to be $300 million? Mary, upon hearing this, couldn't contain her excitement. $300 million. That much money for our company is like a dream come true. The employees started whispering when they heard this. Mary proudly announced to the grieving employees, "Quiet down. This is the moment when the company and its $300 million inheritance passed to Tom." Upon hearing this, one of the employees burst into uncontrollable laughter. My brother had the will and was reading it next to Mary, who was puzzled by the employee's reaction. My brother's face went pale as he read, Mary, according to the will, the entire company will be inherited by the eldest daughter, Lucy," he stammered. He stared at the will for a moment, then erupted. "This can't be. It's wrong." The lawyer, sounding troubled, confirmed, "This is a legally binding will." My brother's voice grew more strained. "What? I can't believe this. How can Lucy become president instead of me?" "Maybe Dad was just getting old and forgetful," Mary chimed in. "Yeah, your father wasn't thinking straight. A will made by someone losing their mind is worthless." Hearing this, I lost it. I couldn't stand by while they insulted my late father. I couldn't let anyone, even family, disrespect my father, who was a good man till the end. "Stop. The idea of my brother Tom becoming president is even more absurd, in my opinion, I asserted. My brother was furious. What are you trying to say? That I'm not fit to be president? He snapped back. Without hesitation, I fired back, you're absolutely right. How can you lead this company if you've never contributed to it? Don't be ridiculous. Mary and I even built a mansion fit for a president, and we made sure to project the image, he defended. Building a mansion unsuited for a leader and dining extravagantly? That's not good for business. And didn't Dad cover most of the costs for that house and extravagance? How would you even know? I countered. Just before he passed, Dad left me a letter. In it, he outlined all the money he had spent on you and said he would give you a gift during his lifetime. So your share of the estate is practically nothing, I disclosed. Mary panicked. Hold on. Is the inheritance really worth $300 million? Have we already spent that much? It's not fair that we're left with so little. The employee who had been laughing earlier quickly approached Mary and explained that $300 million is from the company's assets, not personal wealth. I'm sure all the employees here understand that. Company funds aren't meant for inheritance, I clarified to Mary. Exactly. The company's money isn't meant to be divided among family members, so I doubt my brother's share is significant, I added. That's heartbreaking, Mary sighed. Oh no, Lucy. Mary was shocked. The inheritance? $300 million? My brother suddenly stood up as if he'd had a revelation and shouted at the employees, Do you really want a plain woman like Lucy as your company president? You must see that I'm more qualified. I have the same charm as my father. None of his colleagues sided with him. Bob took the lead and spoke to my brother. Your father, the one you're succeeding, was a charismatic founder of this company, but you and he are different. What you have is arrogance, not charisma. My brother flew into a rage when Bob calmly countered him. Tom, you may hold a position in our company, but us, the employees, hardly ever see you around. I don't have time for actual work in the company. I'm too busy networking with others. There's no time for menial tasks, my brother argued. Networking? Going on trips and partying all night? Is that what you call networking? That's hardly enough. Bob continued, meanwhile, Lucy's been putting in hard work every day, learning about the company while quietly handling her behind-the-scenes duties. I see the same dedication in her as I did in your father. Lucy is the right person for the job as far as all of us here at the company are concerned, Bob concluded. The other employees nodded in agreement. I was touched and responded, Thank you all so much. Honestly, I'm taken aback by this news, but having seen my father's passion for the company firsthand, I share the same dedication. I'm grateful for your continued support. The employees warmly applauded as I bowed deeply. Emboldened by their applause, I spoke firmly. Each one of you here is a valuable friend who has contributed to our business. Anyone who overlooks that isn't fit to be part of this company, let alone its president. Even the president can be fired by the employees. My brother grew annoyed upon hearing this. What are you talking about? I'm your brother. What are you even talking about? You were the one who said you'd fire me if you became president, brother. I reminded him. I can't keep paying a salary to an incompetent employee just because he's family. This is ridiculous. Can someone please help me out here? My brother pleaded for support from those around him, but all he got were cold stares from the employees. Seeing that nobody was backing him up, my brother and Mary left in a hurry. After that, Tom lost his job and relied on the small inheritance he received. But it didn't last long. Can you lend me some money, Lucy? He asked, kneeling before me. I was disgusted by my brother's behavior. Even after losing his job, he didn't try to find a new one and was still expecting help from the family. I firmly told my mother not to give him any money. His friends, who had once been supportive, turned their backs on him when they found out he lost his presidency to me, his sister. When Mary married my brother, she had envisioned being the wife of the company president, but none of her friends showed any sympathy for her. As their financial situation became dire, my brother and his wife decided to sell their mansion. The proceeds from the sale could have sustained their lifestyle, but without any income, their savings quickly dwindled. When they had nothing left to sell, they struggled to cover their expenses. Eventually, they realized they needed to find work. However, no one was willing to hire them because they lacked any work experience. Eventually, Tom found a part-time job at a convenience store. Now, he's in an unfamiliar role, facing criticism from younger coworkers. Mary's situation changed too. She's no longer a full-time housewife but now works as a cashier at a supermarket, alongside the very part-time housewives she once looked down upon. Her salary is low. Meanwhile, I'm using my experience from behind-the-scenes work to help the company grow. With support from Bob and other employees, the company is thriving. Ironically, my brother's situation has strengthened employee unity. I've pledged to keep working with my mother to expand the business, aiming to bring